Welcome to section 10.1 of genetics. In this section, we will be memorizing the details of Down syndrome. Let's get started. This scene takes place in an unassuming field between a river and the home of an innocent family. However, as you will soon see, this location is currently the site of some serious action. To emphasize my point, look at this guy, clearly falling down to the ground. Down for Down syndrome. But why is he falling down? And where is he falling from? This will all make sense at the end of the story. It all started with a simple robbery. See this mugger holding a gun at this innocent man? The man has his hands up, like you do when you have a gun pointed at you. Now take a close look at his palm. Notice that top crease, the transverse crease? He only has one. Most people have two transverse palmar creases. Anyways, Down syndrome patients often have a single transverse crease on their palms. So this victim with a single prominent palmar crease will help you remember the single palmar crease in Down syndrome. Now, unfortunately, this single palmar crease guy is not the only victim of this stick-up. Notice this nice old lady to the left? She is holding her newborn twins. The fact that she is old will help you remember that the risk of Down syndrome increases with maternal age. Additionally, mothers that conceive at older ages are at an increased risk of non-disjunction occurring during meiosis. If non-disjunction of chromosome 21 occurs, then this leads to Down syndrome. If you look closely, you will see that these twins are conjoined, helping to remind you of non-disjunction. So this old lady with conjoined twins for non-disjunction occurring with advanced maternal age. Now, of course, this sweet old lady didn't conceive these children all by herself, so we also included her elderly husband in this story. Unfortunately, because her husband has Alzheimer's dementia, he's not much help in this situation. As you can see, he's just yelling at his candy bar, completely misunderstanding the crime right in front of him. This confused old man will help you remember that Alzheimer's dementia often occurs in Down syndrome patients even at earlier ages than typical people. Now notice the candy bar. It's a Hershey's chocolate bar. This will help you remember that patients with Down syndrome often have Hirschsprung's disease. So Hershey's candy bar for Hirschsprung's disease. Fortunately, the family's dog is putting up a fight. Notice how this dog protects his puppies by biting between the big and small toe of the assailant. This will help you remember that patients with Down syndrome often have a wide space between their big toe and the adjacent second toe. So biting between the first two toes stands for increased space between the first two toes. Now the puppy's mother is trying to carry them away from the fray. And as dogs do, she picks them up by gently biting the nape of their neck, or the nuchal region. You can see this nuchal skin on this puppy all stretched out. This will help you remember that fetuses with Down syndrome often have nuchal translucency, meaning that fetal ultrasounds will reveal a translucent nuchal region, making it look bigger and stretched out, kind of like this dog. Stretched out nuchal region on this puppy stands for nuchal translucency on fetal ultrasound. And scared of the ferocious dog biting his friend, another mugger panics and trips. Thankfully for the family, he smashed and bent his double-barreled shotgun. Double kind of sounds like duodenum. So the double-barreled shotgun should help you remember the duodenum. And the fact that the double-barreled shotgun is bent up and totally blunted will help you remember that patients with Down syndrome often have duodenal atresia. So blunted double-barreled shotgun for atresia of the duodenum. Hoping to avoid getting caught by law enforcement authorities, another bandit is attempting to escape on an ATV. As you can see with the smoke bursting from under the hood, this ATV is not working. This will help you remember that patients with Down syndrome often have atrioventricular cardiac defects. So broken ATV for atrioventricular defects. Now the bad guys are trying to reach this river to escape. Notice that things didn't work out for this guy. As you can see, he's floating face down in the river, surrounded by his own blood. This bloody river will help you remember blood cell cancer, or leukemia, which is quite common in Down syndrome patients. Now there are two types of leukemia to remember: acute myelogenous leukemia and acute lymphoblastic leukemia. We have a memory hook for each one of these. Look at these mile markers along the river, and notice how each mile marker has a little pink ribbon tied around it. Pink ribbons such as these are often used to represent hope as it relates to cancer. So we like to use pink ribbons to represent cancer. And in the context of a bloody river, this should help you remember that we are dealing with a blood cancer, leukemia, specifically myelogenous leukemia. Remember myelogenous because of the mile markers. And patients with Down syndrome have an increased risk of acute myelogenous leukemia, or AML. So again, pink ribbons on mile markers for acute myelogenous leukemia. And the second type of cancer is acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And the lymph in lymphoblastic refers to white blood cells. So let's discuss this guy with the rocket launcher a little bit more. As you can see, this launcher has blasted a white rounded rocket at the helicopter. The round and white nature of the rocket resembles white blood cells, or lymph, as in acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So again, the white rocket blasting against the helicopter stands for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And with the helicopter spinning out of control, we can now see why this guy was falling down. Remember that guy falling from the sky? Our Down syndrome guy? Well, He was trying to stop the bad guys. As you can see with his gun falling through the air and the dead body in the river, it looks like he was successful in taking out at least one of his targets. Now I want to turn your attention to this canister that has fallen out of the helicopter. As it hit the ground, it got smashed up on one side. This canister will help you remember epicanthal folds, and epicanthal folds are common in Down syndrome patients. So again, smashing canister for epicanthal folds. Now the helicopter has been using its spotlight to identify the perps rushing through this field toward the river. The fact that they are brushing through this field and getting spotted will help you remember brush-filled spots. Now brush-filled spots are interesting features of the iris in the eyes of Down syndrome patients. So again, these bad guys spotted rushing through the field stands for brush-filled spots. So now let's look back at this robber on the broken ATV. He must have crashed into a street sign before arriving. Maybe that's why the ATV is broken. And if you look closely, it looks like the street sign came from E Street. E Street kind of sounds like estrogen. And the fact that the sign is broken and on the ground indicates that estrogen is low in the maternal serum. So again, fallen E Street sign for low estrogen. Now look at this tree over here on the left. One of the robbers took the time to carve their first initial into the tree. Kind of a strange thing to do in a stick-up. I guess they must have done this before the helicopter arrived. Anyways, this poor tree is still bleeding fresh sap from the newly acquired wound. All the sap is dripping down and collecting on the ground. This MSAP stands for MSAFP, or MSAFP, which really means maternal serum alpha-fetoprotein. And the fact that the MSAP is collecting on the ground represents that it's low. So MSAP on the ground stands for low maternal serum alpha-fetoprotein, or MSAP. This poor family can't catch a break. Look at this burglar stealing their HD TV. He is crawling out of the window to escape on the roof. HD TV sounds a lot like beta HCG, and the fact that the TV is exiting from a high window indicates that beta HCG is elevated. So in maternal serum, if the beta HCG is elevated, this could be an indication that the fetus has Down syndrome. So HDTV high on the house for beta HCG. I'd say the worst offense of all is the abduction of their teenage daughter. Awful. She has the letter A worn prominently on her shirt. You can see that rope wrapped around her really tight. This is inhibiting her from escaping. This inhibition represents inhibin, specifically inhibin A, as indicated by her awesome school shirt. Not sure what school she goes to, but it starts with the letter A. Now, being pulled up on the roof indicates that inhibin A is elevated. So the inhibited girl with the A shirt being pulled up onto the roof represents elevated inhibin A in maternal serum. And with that, you have learned all the items you need to memorize for Down syndrome.